Imagine sitting in your home. Boom. You hear an ear-splitting roar resound throughout your house. An intense wave of heat comes over you. You decide to go outside to see what's happening, only to find your city enveloped in a cloud of flame and smoke. This was the experience of hundreds of thousands of Japanese men, women, and children in Hiroshima and Nagasaki after the 2 atomic bombs were dropped. The use of the bombs is often considered inhumane. However, their effectiveness is undeniable. This is due to a variety of reasons. These reasons include the cost of life, the financial costs, and the cost of time of the use of the bombs. Additionally, the strategic advantage provided by the bombs greatly aids in its effectiveness. Also, I will be delving into several alternate timelines that might have happened had the bombs never been used. First is the cost of life. The atomic bombs killed approximately 215,000 people, according to a History.com webpage, and even more were killed or injured as a result of their indirect wave of destruction. Another plan to defeat Japan in World War II was codenamed Operation Downfall. This consisted mainly of a massive mainland invasion of Japan. The generals that proposed this plan estimated over 1 million US casualties. And so, in order to avoid this high casualty count, Harry Truman, the president at the time, called to use the bombs instead. However, what is not stated in the history webpage is the sheer number of Japanese that would have died. Millions of Japanese men, women, and children, civilian and military personnel alike, would have died due to their unwavering tenacity and belief in never giving up or surrendering the war. With that said, the use of the bombs was greatly effective in terms of the cost of life compared to other methods such as Operation Downfall. Now is the cost of finance. According to the Brookings Institution, from 1940 to December 1945, the time period in which the Manhattan Project, which developed the bombs, was active, the cost for this project was nearly $27.2 billion US dollars in 2020 money. 10% of this cost consisted of research and development of the bombs, and the rest consisted of procurement and production of the materials for the bombs. This cost, the $27.2 billion, was only 31% of the cost of all the tanks produced by the US in World War II. According to Norwich University, the total cost for World War II for the US was nearly $4 trillion US dollars in 2020 money, with 400,000 plus US casualties, compared with Operation Downfall, which eclipsed nearly 1 million US casualties. The total cost for an operation such as that would have easily surpassed 1 trillion US dollars in 2020 money. And this once more shows the effectiveness of the use of the bombs compared to other methods proposed at the time. Now we are at the cost of time. After the second bomb was dropped, it took only 1 week for the Japanese government to announce their formal surrender. To compare, the Battle of Guadalcanal took nearly 6 months for the US to achieve victory, and this was only a tiny island. So with that said, Operation Downfall, in an attempt to take the entirety of mainland Japan, would have taken easily at least 1 year. Another operation that was proposed was a naval siege of the Japanese mainland of sorts. And even though this included much less bloodshed, the cost of time would have been much, much greater due to Japan being a somewhat self-sufficient country. And it could have taken years for Japan to be sufficiently starved in order to surrender the war. So therefore, the atomic bomb was definitely the most time-efficient way of ending the war in the Pacific. Now we move to the strategic advantage of the use of the bombs. The use of the bombs put a very large pressure on Japanese military leadership and caused a lot of strife and internal conflict, reducing military power of Japan. The website for the National World War II Museum states that US leaders planned the bombs so close together in an attempt to make it look like the US had many more bombs ready to be used towards Japanese leadership. And in fact, the US did have a third bomb scheduled for August 19th, 1945, to be dropped on Tokyo had the Japanese Emperor Hirohito not surrendered due to his idea that the bombs were too catastrophic and too destructive. Now, it's probably one of the most interesting ideas of history is predicting what could have happened had an event not happened at all. And this event, the atomic bombs and their usage on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, have forever changed the world as we see it. But what could have happened? Let's find out. The US may not have risen to power as quickly as they did before due to the massive loss of life in an attempt to invade mainland Japan. This would have caused a massive military rebuilding and a massive mourning of the soldiers who died. Additionally, the Japanese people and Japan itself would have been utterly decimated by an invasion such as Operation Downfall. And it would take much, much longer for their economy to rebound like it did in the years following the war in our timeline. Or they could have not rebounded at all, and Japan would not be the same as it is today. Finally, the Cold War may never have happened due to the US not being as significant of a powerhouse or such a prominent player on the world stage. And even if it did happen, since the bombs were never used, the destruction would not have been known, and they could have been used by either the US or by Russia, resulting in massive warfare, maybe even World War III. So to conclude, the use of the atomic bombs was not nearly as straightforward, or it was not as humane as other methods. However, it was by far without a doubt the most effective method in ending World War II in the Pacific. And this was due to the cost of time, the financial cost, and the cost of life of the use of the atomic bombs, as well as their strategic advantage they played in ending the war. And yeah, so what do you say? If you were in Truman's shoes, would you invade Japan? Would you try a massive naval blockade? Or would you try to end the war as quick as possible using the bombs? Thank you.